The first night it happened, there was no reason for me to be afraid. That's the part that still bothers me when I think back on it. Nothing was wrong in any obvious way. I wasn't watching anything disturbing. I wasn't tired enough to be drifting in and out of sleep. I wasn't even anxious. I was just sitting on my bed with my back against the wall, phone glowing softly in my hands, scrolling through nothing in particular. The house was quiet, but not unusually so. The kind of quiet you only notice later, once you realize how wrong it felt. At the time, it was just background silence. Comfortable, familiar. Then my thumb stopped moving. I didn't consciously decide to stop scrolling. My body just froze. My breathing slowed without me telling it to. Not panicked, not rushed. Just careful. Like my body was trying not to make noise. I remember becoming suddenly aware of everything around me. The faint hum of electricity inside the walls, the distant sound of a car passing somewhere down the street, the soft ringing in my ears that comes when a room is too quiet for too long. That's when the feeling settled in, that certainty. The kind you don't question. Someone was watching me, not from outside the house, not from a window. This felt closer than that. This felt like the presence was already where it wanted to be. Inside. Close enough that it didn't need to move. I kept my eyes on my phone longer than I should have, afraid that if I looked up, I'd confirm something I couldn't undo. I told myself I was imagining it, that everyone gets that feeling sometimes, that it would go away if I ignored it. It didn't. When I finally lifted my gaze, my bedroom door was open exactly the way I always left it, just wide enough to see into the hallway. The hallway light was off. At first, I saw nothing, just darkness layered on darkness, the edges of the doorway blending into the shadows beyond it. Then my eyes adjusted. Something shifted. A shape began to separate itself from the darkness, not moving, just becoming clearer. Like it had been there the entire time, waiting for me to notice. A person, pressed flat against the edge of the doorframe, body hidden behind the wall, revealing only what they wanted me to see. A shoulder, the faint outline of a head, and then I saw the eye. One eye wide open and unblinking, catching just enough light to reflect back at me. There was no confusion in it, no surprise. It wasn't the look of someone who had been caught. It was the look of someone who had been waiting. My heart began to pound so hard I felt it in my throat. My chest tightened. I tried to swallow, but my mouth had gone dry. I don't remember blinking. I don't remember breathing normally. All I remember is that eye fixed on me, calm and patient. The silence stretched unbearably long. I waited for it to move, to blink, to pull back, to do anything that would prove this was real, and not my mind playing tricks on me. Instead, the corner of the mouth slowly came into view, and it smiled. Not a wide grin, not exaggerated. Just enough of a smile to let me know they were enjoying this. Enjoying the fact that I was frozen, that I didn't know what to do. I let out a sharp gasp without meaning to. The face vanished instantly, not quickly, not in a panic. It simply withdrew, smooth and controlled, disappearing behind the wall like it had never been there at all. I jumped off the bed and slammed my door shut so hard, the frame rattled. I locked it, then checked it again, then checked it a third time, because my hands were shaking too badly to trust myself. I slid down to the floor and pressed my back against the door, knees pulled to my chest, listening. I expected footsteps. I expected the sound of someone running away, or trying the handle, or laughing. There was nothing, just silence. Minutes passed, then longer. My legs went numb from sitting on the floor, but I didn't move. Every small sound made my heart jump. The house felt different now, like it was holding its breath. Eventually, I forced myself to stand. I opened the door slowly, half expecting that face to be right there again, closer this time. The hallway was empty. I turned on every light in the house. The brightness felt wrong, too harsh, but I needed to see. I checked every room, every corner, every closet. I checked under beds, even though I knew how ridiculous that was. Everything was locked. Everything looked normal. I laughed quietly to myself, the sound shaky and forced. I told myself I had imagined it. That stress does strange things. That the brain fills in shapes when it's bored. I was almost convinced. Then I noticed the hallway light. It was on. I stood there staring at it, my stomach slowly dropping. I knew I hadn't turned it on, which meant whoever had been watching me hadn't been hiding in the dark. They had been standing in the light the entire time, choosing how much of themselves I was allowed to see, and that meant they knew exactly where I was. Living alone teaches you patterns. At first, they're comforting. You don't even notice them forming. You just fall into them naturally, repeating the same small actions every night because they make the space feel predictable, safe, familiar. Mine were exact. At 9:45 every night, I locked the front door. I didn't rush it. I turned the deadbolt slowly and checked the handle twice. At 10 o'clock, I made tea. Same mug, same kettle. At 10:30, I sat down on the couch, turned on the lamp in the corner, and put on the same show I'd been watching for weeks. Same volume, same seat cushion. I didn't think anyone else noticed. The first sign that something was wrong was so small I almost missed it. One night I came home and found the chair at my kitchen table pulled out slightly, just a few inches. I remember standing there staring at it, trying to remember if I'd done that before leaving. I decided I must have. Another night, a cabinet door was open, just barely. I closed it and laughed at myself for being paranoid. Living alone messes with your head, I told myself. Then my TV volume was one number lower than I remembered. That bothered me more than it should have. Still, I blamed myself. I always did. It wasn't until the night I came home early that the excuses stopped working. I'd left work sooner than usual and pulled into my driveway almost an hour ahead of schedule. When I walked up to my front door and turned the knob, it opened. Unlocked. I stood there with my keys still in my hand, staring at the door. My heart started racing immediately. I knew I locked it. I always locked it. I listened. The house was silent. No movement, no voices, no footsteps. I told myself maybe I'd rushed that morning. Maybe I'd been distracted. I stepped inside slowly, checking each room with the lights on. Everything looked normal. Nothing was missing. Nothing looked disturbed. That night, I sat on the couch earlier than usual. The lamp was off. The house felt wrong, but I couldn't explain why. At 10:12, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. The message was short. "You're early tonight." My stomach dropped. I stared at the screen, waiting for a second message that would explain it away. A wrong number, a joke, something. Nothing came. I typed back, asking who it was. The response came instantly. "You usually sit down at 10:30. My hands went cold. I looked around the room, suddenly aware of how exposed I felt sitting there. That's when I noticed the lamp in the corner was already on. I hadn't turned it on yet. Another message appeared. "You forgot the tea." My throat tightened. I hadn't told anyone about my routine. No one visited, no one came over. No one should have known those details. I typed again, demanding to know how they knew this. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. Behind me, the couch creaked. Not the sound of old springs settling, not the house shifting. Weight, carefully shifting weight. My phone buzzed again. Don't turn around. I sat completely still. My breathing became shallow. I could feel my heartbeat in my ears. I stared straight ahead at the dark TV screen, too afraid to see my reflection. The presence behind me felt close, close enough that I imagined I could feel warmth. Another message. I didn't mean for you to come home early. The couch dipped slightly. I didn't scream, I didn't move. I just sat there, realizing the routines I thought kept me safe had actually taught someone else exactly where I'd be, exactly when I'd be there, and exactly how alone I was. People always say silence is the scariest sound. They're wrong. Breathing is worse. I was lying on my couch with the lights off, rain tapping steadily against the windows, the sound soft enough to blur my thoughts into something distant and unfocused. I wasn't asleep, but I wasn't fully awake either. That heavy, drifting state where time stretches and your body feels heavier than it should. The house felt calm, familiar, safe. That's why it took me a few seconds to realize something wasn't right. I heard an inhale, slow, measured, careful. At first, I assumed it was my own breathing. When you're half asleep, sounds blend together. Your mind fills in gaps. I held my breath to prove it to myself. The breathing continued. It didn't match my rhythm. It came again, a long inhale, followed by an uneven exhale, like whoever was breathing was trying not to make noise but failing slightly. There was a wetness to it, a closeness that made my skin prickle. My eyes opened fully. I stayed perfectly still, staring into the darkness of the living room. The rain outside suddenly sounded louder, more distant at the same time, like it was separating me from the rest of the world. The breathing was close, not across the room, not down the hallway, inside the room with me. My heart started pounding so hard, I was sure it could be heard. I tried to slow it down, tried to convince myself that panic would only make things worse. I listened carefully, straining to figure out where the sound was coming from. The breathing shifted. Not quickly, not obviously. It moved just enough for me to realize it wasn't stationary. Whoever it belonged to was repositioning themselves, slowly, deliberately, like they were testing how much they could move without being noticed. I reached for my phone, careful not to let the couch creak. My hands were shaking badly, fingers clumsy as I turned on the flashlight. The beam snapped on, cutting a narrow cone of light through the darkness. Nothing. The couch, the coffee table, the doorway, empty. The breathing didn't stop. It followed me when I stood up. I felt it rather than heard it at first. That sense of being tracked. I took one step, then another, my bare feet cold against the floor. With every step toward the hallway, the breathing became clearer, heavier, closer. By the time I reached the hallway entrance, I could hear details I wished I couldn't. The faint hitch before each inhale, the way the exhale lingered, like whoever it was enjoyed drawing it out. The sound led me to the laundry room. I stood outside the door for a long time, my hand hovering near the handle. Everything in me screamed not to open it, that nothing good could come from confirming what I already knew. I opened it anyway. The breathing stopped instantly. The silence that replaced it felt thick, oppressive, like the air itself had changed. I flicked the light on, my eyes scanning every corner of the room. The washer, the dryer, the shelves, empty. Then I noticed the closet. The door was cracked open slightly, a thin slice of darkness inside. The gap was small, but it felt intentional, like it had been left that way on purpose. I stared at it, my chest tight. Something shifted inside the closet. Not a step, not a movement I could identify. Just a subtle change in presence, like the air inside had compressed. Then a whisper came from the darkness. "I know you hear me." The voice was calm, almost gentle. It wasn't threatening, and that somehow made it worse. My legs weakened. I stumbled back, the flashlight beam shaking violently as my grip loosened. "You weren't supposed to wake up," the voice continued softly. "You usually sleep through the rain." My stomach dropped. They knew my habits. The closet door pressed outward slightly, just enough to make the hinges creak. "I've been here before," the voice said. "You never noticed." The light flickered, just once, but it was enough. I backed away slowly, heart racing, every instinct screaming at me to run. The breathing started again, louder now, no longer trying to hide. I turned and ran. I didn't grab my keys. I didn't put on shoes. I burst out the front door into the rain, lungs burning, feet slapping against wet concrete. I didn't stop until I reached my car, hands shaking as I locked the doors and crouched inside. I stayed there until morning. When I finally worked up the courage to go back inside, everything looked normal. The laundry room, the closet, the lights, all exactly the way they should have been, except for one thing. The couch cushion where I'd been lying was indented, not from me, from someone sitting there long enough to leave a mark. Even now, lying awake at night, I sometimes hear that breathing again, slow, patient, like whoever it belonged to knows exactly where I sleep and is waiting for me not to wake up next time. I've always been careful about locks. Not obsessive, just consistent. It was one of those habits you build when you live alone long enough. Every night before bed, I checked the front door, then the back door, then the windows. Sometimes twice, just to quiet that small voice in the back of my head. That night, I checked everything 3 times. I remember laughing softly at myself when I finished, standing in the hallway with all the lights on, feeling a little embarrassed for being so paranoid. Nothing had happened. Nothing ever happened. I told myself I was just tired. I went into my bedroom, shut the door, and locked it. That detail matters. I put on my headphones and played rain sounds. Steady, heavy rain that drowned out the house noises and helped me relax. I lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling as the sound washed over me. Slowly, my body started to sink into the mattress. I must have drifted off because the next thing I remember was silence. Not gradual silence. Instant. The rain cut off so abruptly it startled me awake. I pulled one headphone off my ear, confused, and that's when I heard it. A voice inside my room. "Why did you lock the door?" My heart slammed so hard it felt like it knocked the air out of my lungs. I ripped the headphones off completely and sat up, my eyes snapping toward the sound. My bedroom door was open. It hadn't been opened before. The hallway light was off, leaving the doorway framed in darkness. I stared at it, my mind scrambling to make sense of what I was seeing. I knew I had locked that door. I remembered the click of the lock, the slight resistance when I tested the handle. I hadn't imagined that. "Hello?" I said, my voice barely above a whisper. No answer. Then the voice spoke again, closer this time. I was already inside. Every muscle in my body went rigid. I felt cold all over, like my blood had drained away. I slid off the bed slowly, backing toward the window, my eyes never leaving the open doorway. The voice wasn't threatening. That was the worst part. It sounded calm, almost conversational, like someone explaining something obvious. "You always lock it," the voice continued. "You did tonight, too." My stomach twisted. They knew my habits, knew my routine, knew me well enough to comment on it. I swallowed hard. "Who are you?" There was a pause, then a soft chuckle. "I don't think you'd recognize me," the voice said. "You've never really looked." The light inside my closet flicked on. I froze. The closet door was open, just a crack, the warm yellow light spilling out onto the carpet. I hadn't turned that light on. I hadn't opened that door. "I didn't mean to wake you," the voice said gently. "You sleep deeper with the rain." My chest felt tight, every breath shallow and painful. I could feel my heartbeat in my ears, drowning out everything else. The closet door shifted slightly, not opening fully, just moving enough to let me know someone was behind it. "I sit there sometimes," the voice continued, "right there, when you're asleep." I shook my head, backing farther toward the window. "Stop," I whispered, though I didn't know what I was asking them to stop doing. The voice sighed like I'd disappointed them. "You're not supposed to notice," they said. "That's when things get complicated." The closet door creaked open another inch. I ran. I threw myself toward the window, yanking it open with shaking hands. Cold air rushed in. I didn't care how high it was or how badly I might get hurt. I climbed out and dropped into the wet grass below, pain shooting up my legs. I didn't look back. I ran barefoot through the yard, through the rain, until I reached the street. I didn't stop running until I reached a neighbor's house and pounded on the door until someone answered. The police came later. They searched my house top to bottom. Closets, attic, crawl space. They found nothing. No signs of forced entry, no fingerprints, no evidence anyone had been there. Except for one thing. My bedroom door. The lock was broken from the inside. Even now, months later, I still lock my doors. But sometimes, when the rain stops suddenly in the middle of the night, I lie awake staring at my closet, wondering if the reason nothing was taken is because they never planned on leaving.
Hello and welcome to Daytime, your place for scary stories, straight from the horror forums of Reddit. Make sure to like and subscribe for more horror tales of things that go bumping the night. On tonight's episode, a man who starts a woodworking class gets a visit from someone who has intentions of doing more than just cutting wood. So, if you need work done, make sure not to call the copycat carpenter.
For a few years, I've worked as a private contractor. My grandfather taught me to be a woodworker, carpenter. Grandma used to say I could properly use a dowel before I could talk, but I think they might have exaggerated a bit. Still, I love making things with my hands. That passion has given me quite a lot over the years. A family, a home, a steady job, a 68-foot Dodge Charger. What more can you ask for? That is, until not too long ago, when I got a bit more than I asked for. When the COVID pandemic hit, there were a lot of people who lost their jobs. My firm was pretty much fine, as people needed to fix up their houses to make it through an entire year indoors. There was also a rising interest in custom furniture, so we got a lot of special orders. I felt kind of bad at doing so well, so I decided I wanted to do something to give back to the community. So, for those people who lost their jobs, I decided to start a woodworking class. My wife loved it. I got to use the wood shop at a local high school after just a few short talks with the principal. I put up flyers around town, posted some ads on social media, and asked my daughters to spread the word in their class. We still made sure to adhere to safety standards, so there could only be 10 people at a time, and we were spread out far and wide. It took me less than a month to put it all together, and sooner than I realized, I was a teacher. It was easier than I thought it'd be. As soon as I started talking about what I loved, I was unstoppable. One by one, I asked my students what they wanted to make. Robert, an older man, wanted to make a pool cue. Donna, a stay-at-home mom, wanted to make a patterned rolling pin. Everyone had their own idea. Then there was Roy. Was somewhere in his 40s. He was skinny, had a slight limp, and a face that just screamed that he'd been punched a few times too many. He had a surprisingly deep voice with rolling R's, black hair like a wet crow. "So what do you want to make, Roy?" I asked. "Any ideas?"
What do you want?
He asked back.
Me? I'd make a...
He surprised me, but I thought about it. I tried to figure out something that a guy like Roy could make use of. I thought about a baseball bat or something sporty, but he didn't seem like the type. I winged it. "A shoehorn," I said. "What do you think?"
Maybe.
He nodded.
A shoehorn.
"Or maybe a spice rack?" I continued, weighing his reaction. "Paint it something nice, something that matches your kitchen,"
Then I'll make a spice rack.
said Roy, rolling the R in rack. That's how our first class started. I went through the tools, and everyone was free to bring their materials over to the shop to make their project. They could also make them at home and come in for feedback. It was all very casual and free-form. Most of them were excited, and I had a few talks about what tools to use, what to look for, and even what channels to check out online. We started making step-by-step plans to finish our projects in time for our 5th and final session. During all this time, Roy didn't do anything. He didn't make any plans, he didn't make any sketches, he never asked any questions. He just stood there, nodding his head, rolling his R's. Sure, he was going to make a spice rack, he said, but he had nothing to show for it. 5 sessions came and went, and everyone had something to present. Robert finished his pool cue, and Donna made an amazing star pattern for her rolling pin. Roy, on the other hand, had nothing. "Didn't you finish your project?" I asked.
I did.
He said.
I just didn't bring it.
Again, that rolling R in bring made me shiver, not in the good way.
We'd love to see it.
Robert said.
It's okay if it isn't perfect.
But it is.
Nodded Roy.
It is perfect.
He rolled the R in perfect just a little bit too long. Robert was clearly uncomfortable. Once my first group of students finished, the next batch signed up. A lot of younger folks this time, a majority under 18. And to my surprise, a returned student, Roy. While Julianne and Greg wanted to make a chessboard and a wall shelf, Roy didn't want to make anything. Instead, he just asked me again.
What do you want to make?
This time I said a ladder, a tool, something practical. Roy agreed. The weeks passed one after another, and the same thing happened. Roy kept showing up empty-handed, while the other students just looked at him funny. Greg made his shelf from solid oak, and Julianne made her chessboard from birch. Roy, on the other hand, just listened to my instructions and took notes. He really seemed like he wanted to make something, but he just never did. As I started my 3rd batch of students, Roy came along for the 3rd time. Again, he asked,
What do you want to make?
At this point, I was frustrated. "I'd make a tool shed, Roy," I said, "to put all my other projects in." He lit up with a smile and nodded. I could have said spaceship. He still would have agreed. The other students noticed something was up, and 2 of them didn't come to the 2nd session. 2 more dropped out by the 3rd. By the end of the final session, it was just me, Roy, and 3 people who had nothing to show. They were eager to leave, and I didn't feel like stopping them. Finally, there was only me and Roy left as I cleaned up. As I put away the sign-up sheets, he sat down across from me with a big smile on his face.
I finished it.
He said, "And finished what?"
The tool shed.
"Right, is that where you keep the spice rack and ladder?"
Yes.
I laughed, but he didn't. I waited for him to tell me it was a joke. But he was dead serious. He stayed silent, watching me. "You're serious," I said. "You actually made it, didn't you?"
Yes.
He nodded.
Want to go see?
"I don't think so, Roy. No offense, but I'm not sure we're that close,"
Okay.
he said. As casually as picking up a pack of gum, he suddenly pointed a gun at me.
I want you to see. I need feedback.
It is a strange feeling being so casually threatened. You don't realize the danger at first. Mortality is just this fleeting, abstract concept until you stare down the barrel of a loaded handgun. Suddenly, you remember that you can die. We took my '68 Charger. Roy was slightly larger than I thought, and he had to lean back the passenger seat to fit his legs. Even without pointing the gun at me, I could almost feel it, like a heat radiating towards me. Roy seemed overall pretty calm about the whole thing, but my mind was racing. What was I supposed to do? Ram the car into a tree? I couldn't decide, and before I knew it, we'd been on the road for over an hour. Roy pointed at an exit and told me to follow a dirt road. I could feel my phone buzzing like crazy. My family was getting worried. He still hadn't asked me to turn it off. Maybe they could track me. The road just seemed to go further and further downward. I had to crawl at a slow pace just to spare the suspension. After about 20 minutes, there were more roots and boulders than actual road. The phone stopped buzzing. We were off the grid. I parked the car and stepped out at Roy's instruction. Using a small flashlight, he showed me the way forward. We were deep in the forest, but I could barely hear a single bird. A few chickadees at most.
My sister gets me the materials. She's very resourceful.
Every rolling R seemed to be on the edge of turning into a growl. I peeked behind me only to see the gun pointing straight at me.
Eyes forward,
He said.
I want your honest first impression.
I could have sworn his eyes were red. At first, I didn't notice the clearing in the woods. There was a strange metallic smell in the air, strong enough for me to taste it. Still no birds, no insects, just a breeze sweeping through the trees.
There,
Said Roy.
my tool shed.
The flashlight fell upon something. It looked nothing like a tool shed. In many ways, it looked like nothing I'd ever seen before. Something started boiling up inside of me. That's not wood,
No,
said Roy.
it isn't.
I had to look away, but I felt the gun push me forward.
Look!
I looked. Bones, sinew, muscle, and cartilage. A big, grotesque, hollow square. Every single detail was a nightmare in itself. The skin draped over the door was the last straw for me, and I fell to my knees, covering my face with my hands. Again, the cold steel of a gun pushed against me.
We need you to look at 2 more things.
Oh god, the spice rack, the ladder. Stepping into that tool shed was like walking into hell. Most of the materials were dry, and there wasn't a single insect anywhere near. With nothing but Roy's flashlight, I only caught quick glimpses of the interior. I tried looking away, but the presence of that gun was enough to force my eyes forward.
There, the spice rack.
He said, please, I saw rows of bony fingers, arranged like they were holding cups, femurs arranged like a ladder. I blinked and turned around to plead for my sanity. Roy wasn't himself. He was at least a foot taller, and his hair had grown longer. He smiled with anticipation, his eyes reflecting a clear shade of red. Small white fragments poked out of his hairline, like pin feathers of a bird, or sharp nails. His fingers seemed longer.
You're useless.
He growled, rolling his tongue.
This was a mistake.
I had to think of something. Say something. Anything. The shoehorn? I gasped.
What shoehorn?
The first day, I said a shoehorn or a spice rack. Did you ever make the shoehorn?
I could.
Then show me. In an instant, he grabbed my arm, pushed me to the ground, and placed his knee on my back. He was going to break my arm. The realization hit me like a bucket of ice. He was going to make a shoehorn out of my shoulder blade. Wood! You need to make it out of wood! I pleaded. That's the rule.
I make the rules.
He grinned. You're so used to a single material. A true craftsman needs to be able to work a variety of materials. Birch, pine, oak, willow, all kinds.
I can make things you can only dream of.
He bent my arm further like he was trying to snap a carrot. Then do it. Make one. Pine wood, there's plenty of it to go around. He stopped. With a sigh, he let go and stepped off.
Fine.
moaned.
Wait, Hera.
He pushed me into the shed and closed the door. I fell to the floor, complete darkness. It was like a nest, covered in branches, mud and grass. In fact, it smelled more like mud and grass than anything else. I couldn't help but wonder how something so grotesque could be almost completely without smell. It should have stunk like hell in there, but it didn't. A faint whiff of iron, that was it. The first thing I tried was my phone, but it was no help. There was no reception, and the light did nothing but to bring my nightmares to life. I couldn't stand to see my surroundings, but feeling the walls blindly didn't help either. I couldn't see any weak spots, but I couldn't feel any either. I was stuck. The door was locked. I don't even know how, but I couldn't budge it. The entire shed was sturdy, using some sort of spine dug into the ground as support. I tried feeling my way out in the dark, but all it did was give me an inner picture of what I was actually standing in. After a while, it got so dark that I didn't know if I was closing my eyes or not. I lost track of the door. It all just felt wrong. How can you differentiate a door from a wall when all you see and feel is dry meat and bone? I tried everything. Putting support on my back, I sat down and tried kicking to find weak spots. I tried the ceiling, I tried lifting, wedging, leverage. Nothing. The shed wouldn't budge. It felt like I struggled for an eternity, but it had probably just been an hour. Light or no light, I couldn't get out. My phone just sat there in my hands, useless. I felt it in my chest, that black sinking anxiety of the cold, that feeling when you think you're about to die. I must have sat there frozen for hours. I snapped to attention when I heard a sound outside. It was smaller, careful. Tiny steps. Hello, anyone there? I called out with a dry voice.
And?
It was a boy, just some boy, in the middle of nowhere. And all he had to say was, "and." I pushed the confusion away, feeling a hope light up. Hey kid, I smiled. You out there? Can you open the door?
And then?
I paused to think. What the hell was this? And then we can go away. You want ice cream? We can get that. We can get whatever you want. Pizza?
And then?
I was about to explode on this kid. He had this infuriating tone, like he was mocking me. Then, suddenly, the door opened. He had the same dark hair as Roy, but was no more than 10 to 13 years old. The same red eyes, the same pale complexion. He was dragging some sort of blue plastic garbage bag.
And then?
He asked again. I don't know what you want. What? I looked around. The coast was clear. I couldn't leave him there. I tried picking him up, but he recoiled. He shook his head and stepped away.
And then?
He said.
And then?
We have to go, I whispered, and come on.
And then?
He said, matter-of-factly. He stepped inside the shed and closed the door. I just started running. My car wasn't far off, and I was far quicker on the way back than I'd been getting there. The keys were still in the ignition. The Charger seemed just as eager to get me out of those woods as I'd been getting out of that shed. Together we turned around and drove like maniacs back to the main road. I didn't care about the boulders, roots, vines, and bushes. I had to go now. With a beaten suspension, we managed to get to the main road. I stepped on the gas. I'd rather die in a car crash than anywhere near Roy and his creations. What happened next was a blur. I was pulled over by a highway patrol who noticed I was in shock. I gave a statement about a kidnapping. Trying to explain what I'd seen just made the deputy shake his head. Maybe he didn't believe me, or maybe he'd heard this before. Either way, he made very few notes, barely took my name. I've since shut down that class, and I'm being treated for a stress disorder. I get these stomach cramps, and I have to sleep with the lights on. I have to see that I'm out of that hellhole with my own eyes. When the light disappears, I can't be sure anymore. I'm gonna see a therapist about it soon enough. I've gotten a few recommendations. Not sure I like the idea of overexposure therapy, but whatever works. I haven't heard anything about an investigation, but there have been no reports of murders nearby. Not to the extent that you could build a shed out of the remains, or a spice rack, or a ladder. Wherever Roy got his materials, it must have been from somewhere else. Maybe that kid knew. I think about him a lot. I get the feeling that he wasn't there to rescue me, so much as to just put away that plastic bag of his. But Roy's still out there, That I'm certain of. After all, he sent me a shoehorn in the mail a few weeks ago.
Hello and welcome to Daytime, your place for scary stories straight from the horror forums of Reddit. Make sure to like and subscribe for more horror tales of things that go bumping the night. On tonight's episode, a man with intentions of having a friendly conversation is told something that will haunt him forever. So, please share with us if you have ever seen the Sunflower Room.
In September of 2009, I was at a wine-hazed after-party at my friend Micah's place. I ended up sharing a bottle of white with a stranger. We'd been chatting all night, laughing at everything and nothing. We'd settled ourselves on a balcony with a ridiculous pile of blankets, sofa cushions, and pillows, all kinds of cozy. Other people at the party had come and gone, but we'd stayed there for hours. She was from a small town in Minnesota, but had come to West Virginia for her master's degree. She was just going to stay out here in Juniper for a few days to help her friend move. We don't get a lot of visitors out here. Somewhere around the 3 a.m. mark, we finished our bottle. She was half asleep on my shoulder, waking herself every now and then with little hiccups.
Whenever I get sad, like really sad, I do this thing.
She said.
Close your eyes.
Sure, yeah, I nodded.
I imagine this door, a white door. Can you see it?
Yeah.
So I open it, and there's this room, but with a dirt floor. Earthy, fresh with rain. You gotta, smell it.
I tried my best. I was enthralled by the smell of her coconut shampoo, but there was something else there. A tinge of soil, rich with morning dew. I smell it, yeah.
So, I take what makes me sad, and I put it into a little seed. And then I plant it. I put it away. And later, it blooms into this beautiful sunflower.
So it's like a big sunflower room.
Yeah, but they get this blue shade.
She smiled.
Because they're sad.
Are you sad? She smiled and shook her head. I stayed awake as long as I could, trying to be a good shoulder for her to sleep on. And by the time I woke up, she was gone. Now, this was many years ago. It was one of those beautiful early adult memories that just stick with you, which you can look back on whenever life doesn't seem worth the trouble. When my studies were too much, or I had a bad breakup, or a rough day at work, that memory was my happy place. Back on that balcony with that gentle weight on my shoulder. Nowadays, I work as a foreman at a local processing plant. Not that glamorous, but it gives me everything I need. You can't underestimate the value of job security in this market. I certainly don't. I have been in a comfortable position for years. I can't complain. I've gotten a bit stuck in a rut, and those days of wine-hazed optimism feels like a bygone age. But then one night, I got a stark reminder. In that twilight hour between sleep and consciousness, I found myself looking up at the ceiling of my bedroom. The image of a white door came to mind. The same door that beautiful stranger had introduced me to so many years ago. A simple wooden door with white paint peeling off at the edges. A brass knocker that had started to turn green. In my mind's eye, the door swung open. Beyond it was a field of overgrown sunflowers, abandoned for years. Weeds and undergrowth thick enough to form a solid barrier. A sour smell emanated from the room, and I could hear the buzzing off flies. As I reached to close the door, a thorned tendril fell out and wrapped itself around my neck, puncturing my skin. As I opened my mouth to scream, a blue sunflower forced itself into my mouth, rough petals pressing against the back of my tongue. And I woke up, coughing. I ran into the bathroom, gagging violently. I had this sour taste in my mouth and a rash around my neck. Little inflamed dots, like I'd been strangled with poison ivy. I couldn't stop coughing, and my heart was racing. I'd had allergic reactions before, but never something that constricted my breathing. This was a first. Finally, I felt something dislodged from my lungs. I bent over the sink and forced it out of me. For a few agonizing seconds, it traveled up my throat and left me. Dozens of sunflower seeds, blue. That night messed me up. The next day, I bought a salve for my neck rash, but I'd already scratched it so bad that I had open wounds. The felt like my body was trying to reject my head. I was more tired than usual, and I kept getting these strange bouts of nausea. On top of it all, and I don't want to go into graphic detail, but there was blood in places where blood ought not to be. I took a few days off work and went to see a doctor. They did a few blood tests and concluded that I had gotten an allergic reaction, but they couldn't tell from what. They urged me to change my sheets and try a new non-perfume detergent. I also got a prescription for an epinephrine injector in case my throat closed completely. I spent the rest of the day cleaning, washing, and worrying. And as I went to bed that night, I tried to think about literally anything but that white door. But as soon as my head hit the pillow, there it was, and this time, it opened on its own. They knew I was coming back, and they were ready for me. Tendrils grabbed me, lifting me up into the ceiling, towards the white door with the brass knocker. I tried to hold back, getting cuts across my arms and legs. I could feel blisters building on my skin, turning into hundreds of painful little pearls. I felt my throat closing as I peered inside. There, in the middle of the field of forgotten flowers, I saw a woman. And as she turned towards me, I knew my heart was about to stop. A twinkle from the corner of her eye and the sheen of yellowed teeth from a wide smile. Pressure building. Chest cramping. I woke up in a panic, having forced myself to fall out of bed. I crawled across the floor, only realizing that I couldn't breathe seconds later. I couldn't feel the tip of my fingers, and my chest was ice cold. I counted my heartbeats as I fumbled my way into the bathroom. I reached for my EpiPen, accidentally knocking it down. It rolled across the floor and under the bathtub. I fell flat on my stomach, reaching for it. It was all the way in the back. My vision was fading as the bathroom floor felt colder. I flipped onto my back and tried to calm down. I had been without air for 65 seconds. I could make it to 90. I wouldn't die before 90. I counted it down, staring at the ceiling. It's 70. From that angle, I could have sworn there was a white door above. I could see the outline of the brass knocker and the cracks of the peeling paint. I could hear the tendrils crackle on the other side, and I could feel the eyes of the woman on the other side firmly fixed on me. 80. She was right there. She was waiting. Tonuraure. Please, God. Suddenly, a trickle of air, like breathing through a straw. I could feel my senses coming back to me. The pressure in my face faded, leaving me flushed and teary-eyed on the bathroom floor. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't risk it. First thing in the morning, I called the doctor again, but they just reiterated the need to keep my EpiPen close. They booked me in for a blood test and suggested I slept somewhere else for a day or two. It could be an allergic reaction to bedbugs or dust mites. Looking through my contact list, my thumb stopped over an old college friend, Micah. It was at his party that I'd first met that girl in the first place. I texted him on a whim. Surprisingly, he was still around. He lived in town and he was eager to meet up for a coffee. I met Micah at a small cafe across the street from a local archery range. He'd gained about 80 pounds from last time I'd seen him, but his youthful spirit was as evident as ever. I held out a hand to greet him, and the guy just wrapped me up in a big hug. We got a couple of bear claws and sat down by one of the back tables. Micah was eager to catch up. He told me all about his family and showed me plenty of pictures. His daughter, who wanted to go to veterinary school, his wife, who worked at the DMV, his twin boys, who were out camping.
They just love the wildlife.
Chuckled.
Ever heard of two 12-year-olds who are more interested in bird watching than video games?
After telling him about my life and my work, I tried to slip that old after-party into the conversation. The same one we'd been to all those years ago. He knew exactly what I talked about.
Man, you had it in for her.
He grinned.
Ain't no secret.
You know what happened to her?
Why, you looking to make up for lost time?
Come on, man.
All right.
He smiled.
I'll tell you what I know.
Her name was Josie Fadden. She'd been the friend of a friend, and half the guys at the party had fallen madly in love with her, Micah included.
She got a lot of friend requests that night.
He laughed.
Don't think she accepted any.
You know what happened to her?
Not sure.
He shrugged.
I think she moved to Morgantown to get her master's.
She's still there. Micah leaned back and grinned as he finished his bear claw.
You are making up for lost time, aren't you?
To an outsider, what I did next might sound insane. but I had a few days off work, and I had to stay at a hotel either way. I figured I might as well do it in Morgantown. I drove up there over the afternoon. It was exhilarating. The only thing that could overpower my fear of the white door was the promise of seeing Josie again. It was hard to admit, but out of all the people who'd fallen in love with her that night, I had probably fallen the hardest. More than a decade later, I could smell her coconut shampoo. Still, it was hard to take my mind off my burning neck rash. Covering it with an itchy scarf didn't exactly help. I stopped at a gas station to look her up. I couldn't find her on any social media. I tried both Josie and Fadden, together and separately, but I got nothing. No relatives, no friends, nothing. For all intents and purposes, she was invisible. You don't see that often nowadays. I bought a burrito and ate it in the car. I pondered my options. You can't just walk around Morgantown and hope you bump into the right person. That might work back in Juniper, but there had to be a better way. Sitting there, I nodded off. The world turned dark, and I heard a set of rusty hinges turn. Something carefully moving through the underbrush. A pale hand reaching for me. Unblinking eyes coming out of the dark. It was just a few minutes, but it was enough to send me reeling out of the car. I fell to the pavement, coughing violently. It was getting worse. There was blood this time. I counted down the seconds. My breath came back at 35 seconds this time. If that's how bad it had gotten from a 5-minute nap, a full night's sleep would be the end of it. I got a strange look from a couple of teens walking past. They slowed down to check on me, but decided it was none of their business. I couldn't blame them. I got back in the car. I had to be careful, or I'd end up as a side note in the local paper. Sad man dead in parking lot. That, however, gave me an idea. The paper. Now, literal newspapers have been in decline for years, but Josie went to a very specific master's program at WVU. Some of those student-run sites have been hosted on the same servers since the 90s. Just having a quick glance at one of them, I found news articles and interviews from 2014. I just had to dig further back and look for anything related to her master's, and I might get some kind of insight. I sat there scrolling for the better part of an hour. I'm not much of a phone guy, and the thing was running hot in my sweaty palms. 2013, 2012, 2011. And there she was, Josie Fadden. An article weeks before her graduation in 2011. I could have recognized her a mile away. She had the same dimpled smile. She talked about her master's thesis in invasive plant species and the dangers of unchecked greenhouse gardens.
My favorite is Helianthus cerulea.
The article quoted.
The blue sunflowers remind me of home.
The article noted her working with a local florist to conduct further testing. I took note of the address and name of the owner.
But no matter how pretty it is, it must be contained.
The article concluded.
Locked away.
This lit a fire. I had a lead. I made a couple of calls and got a few names. The name of the florist led to the name of the current owner. They, in turn, referred me to an ex-employee who'd worked with Josie. They, in turn, referred me to one of her old classmates. I didn't get a number, but I got an address to a greenhouse just outside of town where they worked. It was better than nothing. About an hour later, I'd made my way to the greenhouse. It was this large, cylinder-shaped plastic building stretching across the parking lot. The thing was bigger than anticipated. Then again, I'd never been to one before. They were about to close when I walked in, but I couldn't see anyone matching the description I'd gotten. His name was Mark Burton. About my age, thick glasses, thin as a twig. Had a bit of a New England accent. I stopped to ask one of the gardeners, an older woman with a kind smile.
Mark?
She frowned.
Oh, I'm sorry to have to tell you this.
Another dead end. This time, literally. Mark Burton had died a few years ago. Apparently, he'd asphyxiated from an allergic reaction. The old woman sat me down to tell me all about Mark. She had a lot of fond memories of him, and his sudden death had affected her a lot. Apparently, one of her coworkers had found him.
Right down there.
She said, pointing across the greenhouse.
Back where we used to keep Helianthus cerulea.
Blue sunflowers.
Ghastly things, aren't they? Lovely smell, though. Reminds me of coconut.
I made my way back to my car and got back on my phone. Clouds had started to gather overhead, drowning the air with the smell of fresh rain. I found some of Mark's old socials, which were still open as a sort of online tombstone. People posting pictures of him and expressing their regret. It was strange to think about. He would have been my age, had he still lived. Now I might go the same way if I couldn't find the answers I need. And there, a picture. Mark, his sister, and Josie Fadden, tagged as Josephine Earle. A new name. That was it. That was her. An hour later, I was parked outside a small black-bricked townhome, the last known address for Josephine Earle. The sky had gone dark with clouds, and the first spatters of rain were tapping on the window. It was hypnotic, lulling me back to sleep, the realization of which sent a shock through me, jolting me awake. I hurried up to the front door, my pulse planting a headache into the back of my cranium. I was too tired to yawn. My hands shook as I rang the doorbell. What was I even expecting? At that point, I didn't know. It took 20 heartbeats for her shadow to move up to the door. The handle turned and light poured out. The smell of coconut. And there she was. It felt so strange seeing her again. I couldn't believe it. She was different, but it was still her. It was Josie, and in another way it wasn't. Then again, I was barely recognizable as well.
Can I help you?
She asked, Josie Fadden. She just looked at me. It took her a few seconds to even register the name and the implication. Finally, she shook her head.
She's not here.
It's you, right? She sighed and looked away. After a deep breath, she met my eyes.
What do you want?
It's complicated. I thought you might be able to help me.
With what?
The sunflower room. Josie, or Josephine, had stepped back. She unlocked the door and opened it wide. It was strange to see her like this. I'd never seen her frown. Then again, I'd only known her that one night so many years ago.
Let's talk.
She invited me in and offered me a cup of tea. We sat down in her living room, and she refused to look me in the eye. She was visibly nervous, shaking about as bad as I did. Do you remember me? I asked.
Sorry, no.
She said, shaking her head.
But we must have met.
Yeah, I nodded. A few years back.
So I told you about the sunflower room,
She sighed.
the white door, and the field
Where you plant your worries, and they turn blue.
Those plants are native to my hometown, you know. Ever been to Tomskog, Minnesota?
Never heard of it.
Few have.
I sipped my tea, fruity. I want to know what's happening to me. I keep thinking about that place.
And it hurts you, doesn't it? I think I can see a rash there.
It does. Josie finished her tea and put the cup down on the glass coffee table. So why now? I asked. Why me?
It needs new plants.
She shrugged.
If nothing new is planted, the room sort of cannibalizes itself. Hell, it strains itself so much that some seeds make all the way over to our side.
Is that why it's hurting me? Because I haven't planted anything?
Probably.
Then why aren't you affected? Josie got out of her chair and stretched. She turned to me with a smile, but it wasn't the smile I remembered her by.
You have to plant something regularly. At first, it's things you want to get rid of. You plant your worries, your hate, your fear. But after a while, you just have to keep planting. You plant your dreams, your hopes, your loves, even your memories. You just have to keep planting, because if you don't, the room will pull you back in.
And if you don't plant anything?
Then, you.
She shrugged.
What happens to you, happens.
So that's all there's to it? I have to plant things in there?
You have to lose parts of yourself.
She clarified.
Today it is worries, tomorrow, the rest.
She took the empty teacup from my hands and placed it on the coffee table.
But you don't have to plant your own things.
She smiled.
As long as you keep planting something.
I could see it now. There was a real difference to her. She had lost so much, everything down to the dimples of her smile and the music in her voice. She was the gray remains of what had once been Josie. Maybe that's why she changed her name, to reflect the change she'd gone through over the years. You lost it, I said. You lost all of it.
So much.
What's even left at this point?
Not much.
She admitted.
But what little I got, I'm gonna keep.
I tried to get out of my chair, but my legs didn't move. I tasted coconut, and my eyes had started moving on their own.
With you, I can plant, what, almost 40 years of hopes, dreams, and thoughts? And at the same time, tie up a loose end? I won't have to think about that place ever again. I'll lose nothing more.
But you can't just... I couldn't feel my tongue. Darkness. I felt a faint touch. Gentle hands closing around my throat. And in the dark of my mind, I saw that white door with the brass knocker. It opened itself to me. The thorned tendrils moved aside, welcoming me. The blue sunflowers towered above in a world full of green and blue. A full moon looking down like a looming eye in the sky. The pale woman was there, the one with the smile, and the unblinking eyes. And she turned to me, except this time I recognized her. I dared to look closer. This was Josie, the sum of all her worries, dreams, hopes, and joys. Everything planted, put away, and stored. The little parts that made the whole manifested into this sick-looking creature. She barely had any hair left, and her physique had been stretched and twisted. Her skin had grown pale from years of darkness. She stared at me with wet, unblinking black eyes, and when she looked at me, she did so with recognition and smiled. What we'd had together was there in her. Without a word, she grasped my head with her hands. I could tell she wanted to help. She knew me. She recognized me, and she was regretful. Maybe she hadn't meant for me to come here, to see this. Maybe she had just been a drunk girl sharing a secret. She leaned her head against my shoulder with a gentle purr, then looked me in the eye, and smashed my head against hers as hard as she could. I wasn't dead. This wasn't over. Back in Josephine's townhouse, she was leaning over me, choking me. Suddenly, I jerked back awake, thrusting my head forward. I hit her square on the nose, sending her reeling backwards. You? What the hell did you... She grabbed a cheese knife from an empty plate and got back up. I matched her movements to the best of my ability, but I was falling in and out of consciousness. The next moment, I was back there, looking at the dark eyes of she who'd once been the real Josie. The sunflowers were closing in. Thorns crept up my legs. Josie wasn't giving up on me, but there wasn't much she could do. Finally, she took a step back and rushed me, throwing me forward. Awake, I lunged at Josephine. She stumbled backwards, tripping on the edge of a carpet. She fell backwards, breaking her glass coffee table into 1,000 pieces, cutting herself on the pieces. This time, as I collapsed to the floor, I knew I wouldn't be coming back. And there we were, the three of us, the sunflower room, being mauled by thorns and vivid blue petals. My skin punctured, my flesh stripped, and Josie apologetically tried to comfort me. Was this it? Was this all there was to it? Just pain? Forever?
No!
Cried Josephine.
I buried you.
Josie smiled at me, and I understood. So, you don't get away, not even in death. Josie shook her head. You postpone it, and that's all you can do, whether you plant anything or not, I continued. That's it, isn't it? The thorns didn't seem to bother her. She stroked my cheek gently as Josephine was torn to shreds. You said this place used to be beautiful, I reminisced. Could it be? Josie whispered a secret in my ear as Josephine's vocal cords were stretched and snapped. Countless beings, all twisted manifestations of memories and thoughts buried, stared at me from the dark, all with unblinking eyes. And as the blue sunflowers faded from my mind's eye, and in the dark that remained, I asked a final question. Will I see you again? I woke up on Josephine's floor, coughing up sunflower seeds. A paramedic loomed over me, having driven an EpiPen into my leg. Apparently the neighbors had heard the commotion. I'd killed Josephine. She lay dead on the floor. I'd planted her in the sunflower room. I'd postponed my death. Blood tests found that there were drugs in my system. It was deemed an accidental death from self-defense. You might have seen it in the news, but it was just this local domestic abuse kind of story. A lot of context was lost, and there were bigger news circling the media that month. I'm sort of thankful for it. The real Josie had been buried piece by piece over the years. Josephine was all that remained, and she was desperate not to lose herself further. Now, before I tell you what happened next, I want you to think about this with me. Really think about it. Imagine the white door, an old white wooden door, a brass knocker that's been turning green over the years. The door is segmented into two squares, stacked on top of one another. Try to imagine it. You've probably seen something like it before. And as it opens, it gives way to a field of flowers. Beautiful blue sunflowers in neat rows. There you can bury your worries, your hatred, your ugly thoughts, and the caretakers of that room will care for them forever. Imagine the fresh soil between your fingers and pushing something awful down into it. Doesn't sound too bad, does it? Now, here's the thing. I'm sorry. By telling you about the sunflower room, you become aware. It's a mark that you can't get rid of. It is this fixed idea that will settle and grow. It can change things, plant things, take things. We can all mitigate it by just planting that one thing every now and then. If we all pitch in collectively, I think the effect will be milder. Maybe that place is something we've always had. A heaven or hell, depending on how you see it. Maybe it was there all. I didn't believe in the devil. Not really. I believed in bad people, bad luck, bad decisions, but not some red-skinned thing with horns waiting at crossroads. That kind of belief felt childish, convenient, something people used to avoid responsibility. That changed on a highway I'd driven my entire life. It was just after 2 a.m. when I left the city, rain streaking across my windshield in thin, restless lines. The sky was pitch black, no moon, no stars, just clouds hanging low enough to feel heavy. My phone was already dying, screen dimmed to conserve power. GPS shut off because I didn't need it. I knew this road. 2 lanes, long stretches of nothing. A place you could drive for miles without seeing another car if you timed it right. And that night, I had timed it perfectly. The engine hummed steady, tires whispering against wet asphalt. The yellow line slid beneath my headlights in a hypnotic rhythm. I let my mind drift, replaying things I didn't want to think about. Conversations I'd avoided, promises I'd half kept, choices I told myself didn't matter. That's when I noticed the car behind me. Its headlights were different. Not white, not sharp. They glowed a dull old yellow, like something from another decade. They sat low and wide, keeping a respectful distance that somehow felt intentional. I checked my rearview mirror. Still there. I sped up a little. The headlights did the same. I slowed down. They matched it perfectly. That's when unease crept in. Not panic, not fear yet, just the quiet realization that someone was paying very close attention to me. Rain began to fall harder, thickening into sheets. The world outside the car blurred, shrinking into a tunnel of light and shadow. My wipers worked overtime, squealing faintly with each pass. The radio crackled. I hadn't touched it. A deep, smooth voice filled the cabin, warm and calm, like it had always been there. Long night to be driving alone. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. The car drifted slightly before I corrected it. "What the hell?" I muttered. I reached for the radio knob, but it didn't respond. The voice continued, unbothered. "Don't worry. I won't distract you. I know how dangerous that can be." "Who is this?" I said, my voice sounding thinner than I expected. There was a soft chuckle, rich and amused. Someone going the same direction. I glanced back at the mirror. The headlights were closer now. Too close. "I don't want any trouble," I said. "If this is some joke..." "You don't believe in me," the voice interrupted gently. My stomach dropped. The road ahead began to curve, sharper than it ever had before. Trees pressed in from both sides, their branches arching overhead like ribs closing around me. The pavement darkened, cracked in places I didn't remember. "I believe in consequences," I said. "That's it." Another chuckle. "Most people do. That's how I get them to listen. The air inside the car grew warmer, not comforting warm, stale, suffocating. The faint smell of sulfur crept in, mixed with wet rubber and overheated brakes. "Why me?" I asked. There was a pause. "Because you've been negotiating with yourself for years," the voice replied. "I just came to finalize things." A road sign emerged through the rain. "Last exit. No services." I'd never seen that sign before. "I don't make deals," I said quickly. "I never asked for anything." "Oh, you did," the voice said softly. "You just didn't say it out loud." The headlights behind me shifted. Red, not bright, deep, ember red, like something glowing from within. They flooded my mirrors, painting the inside of my car in warning light. I pressed the accelerator, heart pounding, but the speedometer needle dropped instead of rising. The engine coughed. "No," I whispered. "Relax," the voice said. "I always take the long way. Gives people time to remember." The road ahead simply ended. No barrier, no guardrail, just blackness. I slammed the brakes, skidding to a stop inches from the edge. The rain stopped instantly like it had never existed. The engine died. Silence poured in so thick it felt physical. Behind me, the other car stopped. Its door opened. Footsteps approached. Slow, deliberate, crunching on gravel that hadn't been there seconds before. A shadow stretched across my hood, tall and distorted, bending in ways shadows shouldn't. I kept my eyes forward. "You know," the voice said, now coming from right beside me, "everyone expects fire. Screaming, chains." A knuckle tapped against my window. Gentle. But hell doesn't need any of that. Hell is just the moment you realize there's no road back. The window fogged from the outside in. A reflection appeared in the glass. Not horns, not flames, just a man in the passenger seat. Well-dressed, calm, smiling like an old friend who'd been patient for far too long. "Well," he said pleasantly, fastening an invisible seatbelt. "Ready to keep driving?" I woke up at sunrise. The car was parked on the shoulder of a familiar road. Birds chirped, the pavement was dry. My phone showed no missed calls, no location history between 2:11 a.m. and 6:03 a.m. I drove home without stopping, but sometimes late at night, when the rain comes down just right, I feel someone sit beside me, and the road stretches longer than it ever should. I drive better at night. That's what I tell myself anyway. Less traffic, less noise, less of everything that makes the world feel crowded. The highway feels like it belongs to me after midnight, especially when the rain starts coming down hard enough to blur the edges of reality. That night, the rain had been falling since sunset. Steady, patient, like it had nowhere else to be. I left the gas station just before 1:30 a.m., coffee lukewarm, headlights cutting through mist that clung low to the road. My GPS said I had 47 minutes left until home. Same route I'd driven dozens of times. A straight stretch of highway, a county road, then the long curve past the trees. Nothing unusual, at least not at first. 10 minutes in, the radio began to crackle. Not static, more like breathing, soft, uneven. I reached to change the station, but the dial spun freely, skipping past frequencies without landing on anything. Every channel sounded the same. Rain, wind, that low, wet breathing sound underneath it all. I turned the radio off. That's when I noticed the mile marker. Mile septendismit septini. I passed it without thinking. The rain intensified, drumming harder on the roof. the wipers struggling to keep up. A few minutes later, I saw it again. Mile septendismit septini. Same sign. Same dent near the bottom. Same faint reflectors blinking back at me. I slowed down. That wasn't possible. I checked the dashboard clock. 1:47 a.m., still moving, still driving. The GPS hadn't recalculated or rerouted. The road was straight, familiar. Dark trees on both sides, stretching back like a tunnel. I told myself it was fatigue, long day, too much caffeine, too little sleep. Then I saw it a third time. Mile septendismit septini. This time my stomach dropped. I pulled over. The rain softened as soon as the car stopped, like it had been waiting for me to notice. The engine idled, low and uneasy. When I opened the door, the air smelled wrong, metallic like wet pennies and old leaves. The forest beside the road was silent. No insects, no wind, no movement. I stood there for a moment, staring down the empty highway. No headlights in either direction. No sound but my own breathing. Then I heard footsteps. Slow, careful. Somewhere behind me. I turned around, heart hammering. Nothing. Just trees. Darkness piled on darkness. I got back in the car and locked the doors. As soon as I pulled back onto the road, the rain returned at full force, like it was annoyed I'd stopped paying attention. I drove faster this time, too fast. My hand shook on the wheel. That's when the headlights caught something ahead. A person, standing in the middle of the road. I slammed the brakes, tires skidding, heart climbing into my throat. The car stopped just short of them. They didn't react, didn't flinch, didn't move. They were facing away from me, tall, thin, soaked by the rain, clothes clinging unnaturally close to their body. Their head was tilted slightly to the side, like they were listening to something I couldn't hear. I rolled the window down an inch. "Hey!" I called, my voice sounding small. "Are you okay?" They didn't turn. The rain fell straight through them. I realized then, really realized, that the person wasn't casting a shadow. Not on the road, not in the headlights. My chest tightened. The figure's head began to rotate. Slowly, too slowly. Like it wasn't meant to move that way. I didn't wait to see the face. I floored it. The car lurched forward, passing straight through where they'd been standing. There was no impact, no resistance. Just a sudden crushing cold that swept through the cabin, like something had passed through me instead. The windshield fogged instantly. My breath came out in white clouds. The GPS screen flickered. Recalculating. Then the road curved sharply to the right, far sharper than it ever had before. I swerved, barely staying on the asphalt. Trees pressed in closer, their branches arching overhead, blotting out the sky. Another mile marker passed. Mile septendismit septini. I screamed. The road narrowed. The rain sounded heavier, louder, like it was falling inside the car now. The radio turned itself back on. The breathing returned. But this time, it wasn't alone. There were voices underneath it, whispering, layered, overlapping, saying the same thing again and again. "You missed it. You turned too late. You should have stopped." My headlights began catching shapes on the sides of the road, figures standing just beyond the trees, dozens of them, all facing the road, all still, watching. Every time the lightning flashed, I saw them more clearly. People in soaked clothes, torn jackets, bare feet on wet leaves, faces blurred like they'd been smeared across the dark. None of them blinked. The road ended without warning. No sign, no barrier, just blackness. I slammed the brakes again, skidding to a stop, inches from where the asphalt dropped away into nothing. The rain stopped instantly. The engine died. Silence flooded in. Then the figures began to move. They stepped out from the trees, slow and synchronized, surrounding the car. Their footsteps made no sound. Their faces were clearer now, eyes too wide, mouths slack, expressions frozen between fear and realization. One of them pressed a hand against my window. Another leaned close to the windshield. Their lips moved. This is where we realized. This is where it ended. The radio clicked once. A new voice came through, clear, calm, unmistakably human. "Driver," it said gently, "you've reached the end of the road." I shook my head, tears blurring my vision. "I just want to go home." There was a pause. Then the voice replied almost kindly, "So did we." The headlights flickered. The mile marker behind them reflected once more. Mile septindesmit septini. I don't remember how I got home. I woke up in my driveway just before dawn. Engine cold, rain gone, birds chirping like nothing had ever happened. My GPS history showed a straight, uninterrupted drive. No detours, no stops. But sometimes, when I drive at night and the rain starts falling hard enough, my radio crackles, and for just a second, I hear breathing. The rain didn't start all at once. It crept in quietly, almost politely, tapping against the windshield like it was asking permission. At first, I barely noticed it. The road ahead was empty, and the kind of empty that only exists late at night, when even the world itself seems half asleep. It was after midnight. I remember that clearly because the dashboard clock had just flipped over when I passed the last gas station for miles. The sign flickered behind me in my rearview mirror, its buzzing neon light shrinking until it disappeared completely. That should have been my warning. The highway was long, flat, and boring, exactly how I liked it at night, but my GPS chimed softly, rerouting me. "Faster route available," it said. I hesitated. The blue line curved off onto a smaller road, one without a name I recognized. I told myself it was fine. Technology knew better than I did. And honestly, I just wanted to get home. The moment I turned off the highway, the rain intensified. It wasn't gentle anymore. It came down hard and fast, streaking diagonally across the windshield, blurring the road until it felt like I was driving through a tunnel of moving water. I turned the wipers up to their highest setting, but they barely kept up, smearing rain more than clearing it. Trees lined both sides of the road, thick, dark, and tall. No houses, no mailboxes, no signs of life at all. Just endless forest pressing in around the narrow strip of asphalt. The farther I drove, the more closed in everything felt, like the road was shrinking. I tried to distract myself by turning on the radio. At first it was just static. Low, uneven crackling that rose and fell with the storm. I twisted the knob slowly, scanning for music. Anything to remind me I wasn't completely alone out here. That's when the static shifted. It thinned out, almost clearing, and for just a moment I thought I'd found a station. Instead, I heard something else. Breathing, slow, heavy, close. I froze, my hand still on the volume knob. The sound wasn't distorted like a radio broadcast should be. It sounded real, like someone was breathing directly into my ear. I shut the radio off. The sudden silence felt wrong, like the world had stopped listening. That was when I noticed the headlights behind me. They were faint at first, barely visible through the rain. 2 yellow dots floating far back on the road. I frowned, trying to remember the last time I'd passed another car. I couldn't. Still, I told myself it was nothing. Late-night drivers exist. People heading home from long shifts. Someone else following the same, faster route. I kept driving. A few minutes passed. The headlights were still there. Same distance, same position. Not gaining, not falling back. I sped up slightly. So did they. My stomach tightened. I slowed down, pretending to let them pass. They stayed exactly where they were. The rain grew louder, pounding against the roof like thousands of tiny fists. Wind pushed at the car, making it sway gently in its lane. The trees leaned inward as the road curved, their branches whipping and creaking, silhouetted against flashes of distant lightning. Then the road dipped sharply downhill. My headlights swept forward and illuminated something standing in the middle of the road. I slammed the brakes. The car skidded, tires screaming as I fought the wheel. My heart leapt into my throat as the vehicle slid sideways before finally stopping, just feet away from a man. He stood perfectly still in the rain, head bowed, arms hanging loose at his sides. Water poured off him, soaking his clothes until they clung unnaturally to his body. He hadn't reacted at all. No flinch, no step back, just standing there like he'd been waiting. I glanced at my rearview mirror. The headlights behind me were gone. The road was empty. My pulse hammered in my ears as I rolled the window down just enough to speak. Cold rain sprayed inside instantly. "Hey," I called, my voice shaky. "Are you okay?" No response. He didn't move. Lightning flashed, briefly illuminating his face, or what little I could see of it. Pale. Too pale. His features looked wrong somehow, like shadows didn't sit on them the way they should. "I can call for help," I said, reaching for my phone. The man slowly raised his head. He was smiling, not a friendly smile, not a relieved one. It was stretched wide, pulling at the corners of his mouth like his skin didn't fit properly. His eyes reflected my headlights, glowing faintly, completely empty. "Can you give me a ride?" he asked. His voice was calm, pleasant, almost rehearsed. Every nerve in my body screamed. I don't think that's a good idea," I said. Rainwater streamed down his face, but he didn't blink. "You're already stopped," he said, "and it's a long walk." I locked the doors. The sound echoed loudly inside the car. His smile vanished. For a moment, his face went completely blank. Then, his jaw shifted, lowering just a little too far, like something inside his mouth was pushing outward. "I don't like walking in the rain," he said again, his voice deeper now. He took a step forward. I floored the gas. The car surged ahead, spraying water as I sped past him. I didn't look at him as I passed. I couldn't. The road twisted sharply, and I focused entirely on keeping control as the trees blurred into streaks of darkness. My heart didn't slow down. If anything, it beat faster. That's when I heard it. 3 slow knocks from the backseat window. I nearly lost control of the car. "There's no one there," I whispered aloud, my voice trembling. "There's no one there." Another knock, this time from directly behind my head, like someone leaning in close. The rain followed me all the way home. The knocking followed too, sometimes soft, sometimes loud, sometimes right next to my ear, breathing warm against my skin. When I finally pulled into my driveway, the rain stopped instantly. Dead silence. I sat there for a long time before stepping out. The back seat was empty, but the next morning, when I opened my trunk, muddy handprints were pressed against the inside, like something had been with me the entire drive.